All right. Welcome, one and all, to the Cosmic Comic Nation, powered by Comic Con Radio. I'm your host, Tom Torme, and my next guest is a gifted illustrator, artist, designer, writer, animator. He's worked for companies like Marvel, Disney, WWE, Warner Brothers, and many, many more. You might recognize his work on Action Presidents, Action Philosophers, Action Activists, all of which are either in or should be in classrooms all around the nation. And it is with great pleasure and honor that I welcome fellow New Yorker Ryan Dunlavey to tonight's programming. Welcome very much. Welcome. Well, I don't know. Welcome very much. It doesn't make sense.
Welcome very much. That sounds very
welcome. It's a new kind of greeting that I'm working.
We're New Yorkers. Just say, get the hell out of here. You know?
Hey, welcome, hey. Ryan. Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah. How's you doing? How's your mom?
How's she doing?
It's good. Doing all right. All right. I'll see you later.
For those who are listening, as the New Yorkers, we're just screaming from window to window across an alleyway. That's how this conversation is taking place. We're on our stoops.
We act mean, but we're nice. You know,
right.
It's New Yorkers.
Right. Hey, I'll help you find your way. See, like that. It sounds mean, but it's really a nice thing. So, Ryan, really, thank you very much for doing this. It's very cool of you.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, as a comic book enthusiast, as a history teacher, I've got to enjoy your work on multiple levels because I have a copy of the Comic Book History of Animation, which I picked up at Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con this year.
Probably picked it up directly from me, too.
That's right.
That version. Yeah.
I got the Kickstarter backer edition. Yep. With a beautiful sketch and a signature. But I also, in my classroom, have copies that my students get to enjoy of, I'll figure out how cameras work.
Action Activists.
Action Activists, yes. Which
your New York City tax dollars at work.
That's
giving
right.
free comics to children.
Well spent. You know what? Long gone are the days where we used to have to sneak them into our classroom. Now the city is putting them in, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Just a few short years ago, my son's teachers were saying, he should read more real books rather than comics. I was just like, comics are real books. And now they've completely changed their tune.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear you say that because that always irked me. I wrote my thesis in my history thesis in probably 2002, 2003 on Superman and how comic books can be used as primary sources in the classroom. But it's good to hear you say it because that's such a stigma that we're working against for decades now, that comic books are this juvenile. I mean, listen, are there some books that are juvenile? Of course. You can say the same thing about any novel. You can say the same thing about any piece of art. To discredit an entire genre, to discredit an entire medium because of some misconception of what comics potential could be is absurd.
Yeah. Luckily, though, it's like that stigma has been slowly being chipped away, and there's still some snobbery, and there's still some people that would try to censor it and silence it, but it is progressing.
Right.
So now you're getting people like you said, like using it in classrooms, and it's definitely, and not just the fact that it's permeated the pop culture with the MCU and everything else. But yeah.
Well, I was about to ask you, do you think that's a big part of it, that what has transitioned, what has changed that allowed for that, where your son's getting yelled at a few years ago and now your work is in his classroom? Do you think?
I really think it's a generational thing. I mean, right now, a lot of the people that are adults that are educators like yourself grew up, they were millennials, and they grew up, sitting in Barnes and Noble reading every manga on the shelf for free, and they know the value of that kind of stuff. And now those kids that were like clogging the aisles and I couldn't get comics, now they're the ones teaching. And I think that's really, it's just, generations change and progress happens.
No, I agree, and I'm really grateful it did because having your work in the classroom and books like Action Activists, and I really would love to hear how you got involved in this. But books like Action Activists, they really do take very complex topics for the children and present it in such a meaningful way. And I mean, it must be a difficult job in and of itself to take that. Yeah. To figure out the scope and sequence here, and then how do you jam that into a 32-page or 28-page book?
That's kind of the magic of comics. I mean, It's like it's the cliche that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I mean, it's also the magic of my co-author Fred Van Lente, who just knows how to do this so well. He researches and writes so well, and he's just very concise about, okay, this is and I try to do this as well, but he's carrying the bulk of the load, where he's doing all the research and saying, like, okay, this is what we need to get across, and how do you get across this complex idea in 4 pages of comics or 5 pages of comics.
Right.
It's kind of been our shtick since day one. Is we never aim to be a comprehensive text on any subject that we do, whether we're doing a philosophers or a history. It's really more of a gateway drug.
Oh,
more of a intro to whatever the subject is, because there's so much more out there if they dig it with our comics.
That's such a astute way of saying it, because as I was reading last year when I picked it up, or I should say last October, the comic book history of animation, and almost immediately I said, oh my gosh, the first movie studio was here in Brooklyn, where just a few short blocks from where I was working, and then I researched it further, and I really wasn't aware. I mean, I knew they had made, even when I was a child, they were making some television shows there, but I had no idea that it was really the epicenter of it all. I couldn't believe it.
I had no idea either. And, that's part of the joys of doing these nonfiction comics, is like, we knew a lot, like that book in particular, we knew a lot about animation going in, especially, I studied it in school. But there were things like that. I mean, making these books themselves are an education for us as well.
Right.
Doing all the research and finding all these things, like, oh my gosh, there was this giant studio in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
We knew about Edison. He had the first studio across the river over in New Jersey, but digging further, we saw so much more.
That's pretty cool. So yourself and Fred, how did you guys get involved together? How did this dynamic duo come about?
It kind of came out by accident. We'd actually been friends for quite some time. We met in college at a comic book club. We both went to Syracuse University. I was an illustration major. He was a film major. He was actually a year behind me. And these guys that were a couple years older than me that I became friends with had started a comic book club called Comics Plus, and every semester they published a comic. And I found out about it because one of my classmates was into comics and she had joined, and she's like, oh, you like comics too? Come with me to this club and we'll all make comics together. And these became my core friends with that. And Fred, I was writing and drawing stuff on my own for a long time, for almost 10 years. And Fred was, he wasn't able to draw, but he liked the comic book club, and teamed up with an artist named Steve Ellis, who's pretty well known at this point, to make comics together. And they were a team for quite some time. And then flash forward a couple years after college, I was moving to New York City. Fred was moving to New York City at the same time. So was Steve Ellis. The three of us, along with another friend, became roommates. And we were roommates for about a year. And during that year, and we were good friends with Jamal Eigel as well. And he used to be at our apartment all the time. And within that 1 year time frame, we recycled this idea for a role-playing game called Superpowers, which is where you play this superhero with ridiculous superpowers. Like you could make 3 square inches of mashed potatoes. Steve Ellis was the main genius behind this whole thing. And we're like, let's do this for real. Let's publish our own, role-playing game. And that was the first time I actually collaborated directly with Fred, where I drew comics for it. And we all wrote stories. And it was a huge failure, but we had a lot of fun. And a couple years later, I had an opportunity to do a biography comic. I'd been writing and drawing my own mini comics for a while. And it was something I didn't feel I was up to the challenge. And my wife had advised me, she's like, you can draw really well, but your writing still needs some work. Maybe just try doing one rather than doing both with doing comics. And first I asked Fred's wife, Crystal, who's a good friend of mine, is a writer in her own right, to collaborate on me. And then Fred blackmailed her and said, no, tell him you're too busy, because I want to write more comics. He was trying to get that part of his career started. And so we did this Friedrich Nietzsche comic, which was the very first Action Philosophers comic. And it was a huge hit. It was much bigger than we thought it was. We were actually rejected from that anthology. But then I did a mini comic version, and everybody that saw it loved it. And that eventually led to self-publishing a series and paperback books. And now it's coming out in color this year from Rocket Ship. It's been endured. It's been in print since 2005, constantly. And that was sort of our start of our collaboration and our whole doing nonfiction comics together. We did it really as a joke. And it was a complete accident that it became a success. We had no idea. We did not plan it.
And that collection you're referring to, that comes out, I believe, later in the year, right?
Yeah, we have. They're doing 2 volumes this year.
Mm-hmm.
We did a Kickstarter for the second one, but the first one comes out in April, which will be in full color. And it's called Action Philosophers Hooked on Classics.
Okay.
And it's about classical philosophers from the pre-Socratics till, we go to, say Thomas, so like the Middle Ages. And then the second volume goes from the Middle Ages till modern day. And then hopefully we'll do a third one as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's the book that we've had the longest time, and it's stayed in print. It's still used by educators all around the world. And we teamed up with Adam Gazowski, who's this terrific comic book colorist, to color the whole books. And yeah, we're really excited.
And similar story for the Action Presidents that ended up in some classrooms, including my own. Is there any plan to revisit that as well? Maybe
As of not right now, no. There's no plans to revisit Action Presidents. We did that through HarperCollins, and we were contracted to do 4 books, and they did okay, but they're not quite as well as they hoped, and so I don't think that's going to be continuing. There is a big omnibus version that's going to be coming out from them sometime in the future. I don't know exactly when. So we'll see if that goes.
Yeah. And in terms of action activists, the comic book that's part of the Civics for All program that's really been given out to just about every school in the Department of Education. Yeah. How did you guys get involved with this?
Well,
through an extension, I assume, right?
More or less. There's a man in the Department of Ed named Brian Carlin, who's a big comic books fan. Oh no, it wasn't Brian. It was Joe Schmidt. Anyways, these guys, they wanted to, as we were saying before, comics are being used more and more in education, and and a lot of teachers weren't quite sure what to do with that. They weren't really comics literate, but they knew about our book called The Comic Book History of Comics, and they used that. Joe and Brian used that to educate the teachers about comics, about their history, about their literacy, and everything else involved. And because of that, they brought us in to do some talks, because they realized we were local, and just meeting them and talking to them, the wheels started turning. We're like, let's do comics. It was their idea. Let's have Fred and Ryan make comics that are actually part of our curriculum, that we fund and we publish and distribute for free. And we were like, yes, absolutely. We thought it was a fantastic idea.
And how's the reception to that been? Have you heard back from educators, administrators about? Yeah,
in New York City, it's been a huge hit. As far as everything we've heard is nothing but positive. We've kept them very New York centric as well. A lot of the history is about activism in New York. And it's just been nothing but positive. We've done 3 so far. There are plans to do more and continue it. And it's also spun off lots of other projects from the DOE. Have been doing other comics by other art writers, artists in the on subject matter.
I'm so glad to hear that. Your work generally between yourself and Fred, usually it handles such deep, serious, and often philosophical topics, but it does it in such a humorous way. In such a relatable way. So
we can't help ourselves, really.
No, that's great.
We can't stop. But this is just making a joke whenever we can.
And it's that's awesome. That's awesome that synergy kind of comes through in the work. One of the books that I had a chance to read recently, because I told people I'm very open about my ignorance when it comes to MODOK. I know of MODOK.
I don't think you have anything to be ashamed of. I mean,
no, right. I mean,
your social studies teacher is like, that's you know a lot.
Right.
It's okay that you don't know about this weird supervillain from Marvel.
It's okay, but I tell you, when Ant-Man and Quantumania came out, one of the first things people, and actually I should say that prior to that, when the Hulu MODOK series came out. The thing that I saw the most was I had to go pick up MODOK Rain Delay.
Yeah.
And I I admit again that when it came out, I was unaware. I didn't really get into the Dark Reign storyline. I kind of sat that whole thing out, kind of read some recaps, but was so happy.
A lot of people that were into Dark Reign kind of tried to deny that MODOK comic was part of it, but
But it is continuity, right? Dark Reign.
It totally is,
yeah.
Like it or not, nerds.
So
it's for real.
So that comic is my MODOK introduction. Before I watched the Hulu series.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was so fun. So that have you had a chance to see Ant-Man and Wasp?
I did see it, yeah.
What did you think of knowing what you know about MODOK, working on that issue, which was just remarkable, really. The paneling, the writing, the styling, really, really well done, and really like really came out of left field, I think, for what Marvel was offering at that time, and no pun intended, dark tone.
It was kind of a crazy accident that it happened, but it did happen.
You know what? I my curiosity's piqued. When you say crazy accident, what do you mean?
Well, we had been contacted. Fred and I had been contacted by Ryan Penagos of Marvel because they were starting a digital only comic division. It was going to be like shorts. We weren't really sure what it was, and he said, approached us and said, do you guys want to do something for that? And our first pitch was MODOK. Fred actually pitched that book with me, and we were going to co-write it. And then he got too crazy busy, and then I started doing it. And then as I'm doing it, they say, "Oh yeah, we're going to print this, and it's going to be part of Dark Reign." I'm like, "All right, fine." So it's like people have told me, like, it's insane that your first professional writing comic product credit was for Marvel. So I'm like, yeah, well, that's the way it goes sometimes.
I mean, why of all characters? Why you guys picked MODOK? You had a choice?
Yeah. No, we just they just said, well, when they approached us, we were like, okay, we're known for being funny. What's the funniest character we could do? MODOK. And Fred had already actually written, I don't know if it was before, it must have been either while he was finishing, he did MODOK's 11, which is a supervillain team up. It's a great miniseries with Francis Portela. I think they were wrapping it up, and we just said, let's do something with MODOK. And we were throwing ideas back and forth, and then Fred's like, I think we had the elevator pitch is like, MODOK loses all his minions and has to move in with his parents.
Right.
And he
goes to his high school reunion.
Was none of that we figured out. We just knew that was the whole pitch, was MODOK loses everything and he has to move in with his parents.
That's great.
And he told that at one of these plot meetings that Marvel used to have, because he was a regular Marvel writer, and apparently it just killed the whole room.
Yeah.
He calls me like right after the meeting. He calls me from the phone. He's like, "You got to start writing the pitch because they loved it and they want to do it." But he's like, "But I don't have time." I'm like, "All right." And so I started writing the thing. And eventually he's like, "I'm not writing any of this. It's all you." So
nice.
That's what happened.
And did you have because I didn't? Did you have a knowledge of the character prior to the introduction? Prior to the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was a big Marvel head growing up.
Okay.
I read the official handbook of the Marvel Universe cover to cover when I was in the 80s, when I was in junior high. And I've been reading since 1983. And then I dropped off around 2000. Well, around 91 or so, but then I worked at Wizard magazine for about 2 years and I couldn't escape it.
So I'm going to come back to that Wizard comment for a second. Okay. I do know you have an article published in Wizard, which right?
It was actually Toy Fair. It was a Toy Fair special.
Oh, Toy Fair! I love Toy Fair. That was
somebody told me, and the way it happened, I had forgotten that I'd written that. What happened was I'd heard something about Twisted Toy Fair Theater. Somebody had mentioned it, and they said like, "Oh yeah, they never." And I left the magazine at this point, but that they had stopped. They couldn't use DC characters in it. So, but they were like in the first 4 or 5 issues, and then they didn't use it for Twisted Toy Fair Theater, which became Robot Chicken later on. And I was like, "Oh, I wonder if somebody posted them online," and I did, and somebody went on, like some maniac scanned in like the first 10 issues of Toy Fair, and I downloaded them, and I was just looking through them just to see these comics that had never been seen before or since.
Right.
And I was like, oh yeah, I remember I worked on all these, and I came across an article. And like, that's the one article I wrote, and I remember exactly how I did it, which was they were just running short on time, and I had seen it like 3 times after it came through the design department, and I'm just like, screw it, I know Spider-Man, and I just and it just flew. That's kind of how the magazine was. It was just seat of the pants, Eddie, the funniest thing runs.
Right, man. I lived for that magazine. I would come home. I think I was married at the time. I can't recall, but I would come home and look in the mailbox for Wizard or Toy Fair, and when those ended, it was the end of an era for me. But that's
too.
pretty cool.
I really enjoyed working for them as an illustrator.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so just to head back to the MODOK for 1 second. I don't want to harp too much because
listen, I got a lot. I could keep going.
Oh, great!
So it's fine. Whatever you want.
So when the movie came out, they were fellow nerds that were decrying his portrayal in the film and saying they turned him into a joke. And I just remember thinking to myself, I thought he was a kind of a joke. I thought that was
he always kind of has been. But I mean, there's stories where he's a serious threat, and I think he's a really cool character because he is so versatile. If you've watched the Hulu series, he's actually one of the few. Despite how weird he looks, he's a very 3-dimensional character. There's a lot of sides to him. He works as a villain. He's worked as a hero in the Secret Avengers series. I don't know if you ever read that. The stories in there were great, and he was one of the Secret Avengers.
Okay.
But I mean, the thing is with the film versions, you're never gonna get the greatest or the everything that you hoped it would be. It's always gonna be something, it's always going to be something like that. I'm not surprised that it was what it was. I think,
What'd you take away from it? Did you enjoy it?
It was fine. I'm not huge on the Marvel movies. I went.
We're gonna put that on a poster. It was fine. We'll put that on a poster.
I didn't waste my money. How's that?
That's good. That's good.
I didn't feel like I was robbed.
Right.
It's a Marvel movie. I knew what I was getting. It was not as disappointing as other ones. I'll just say that.
Oh, okay.
But, it was. The only thing I found disappointing is I thought the first 2 Ant-Man and the Wasp movies were great, and this one I didn't think quite lived up to it.
Fair enough.
They weren't quite as fun, but I did think the MODOK scenes, even though it was a very different take on the character, I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It was no. The Hulu series is great. I loved it. Jordan Bloom and Patton Oswalt did an amazing job on that series. I loved it.
And did the Hulu series pull from your issue?
All I know is like my name is the only person that's in special thanks on every issue, every episode. So
I'll take that as a definitive yes.
Yeah, I met Jordan though. He's a great guy, and he's writing some great comics. I'm so happy that he's doing some cool stuff now. And he actually, before the series came out, he came up to me and said, hey, we're doing this. We loved your comic, and Fred was there too. And they definitely pulled from every incarnation of MODOK when they were writing that series.
Well, I thought it was a fun series. I
really did too.
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to get a second season, but which is a shame. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about a few of the series that Marvel was put on Hulu. I'm not sure how many of them are going. Maybe I think Hit Monkey may be getting a second one. I'm not sure, but
it did. I think it did get a second series.
Oh, it did. It's on already.
Yeah. I don't know if it's on or any.
Good.
Or not, but I did see something about Hit Monkey season 2.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Maybe Jason Sudeikis pulled that. They pulled the weight a little bit. I'm not sure.
Oh, is that who's in it? I think I watched the first episode. It wasn't for me.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. I try to give everything.
So much. There's just so much to watch.
You know what? But I'm sure, as you said, you're a middle schooler in the '80s and teenager in the '80s. What a stark contrast between.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You don't have to compare.
Yeah. There, like the highlight was the Incredible Hulk TV movie with.
Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and
where Thor and Don Blake were 2 different people. Oh my God, that was awful. But that's the best you could do.
I'm still waiting for a big furry.
Just rewatch I'll just rewatch the 1978 Superman again.
Right. Yeah, and again and again and again
and again.
Yeah. And then occasionally you get a Dolph Lundgren Punisher. And you're like, oh,
That's not
yeah.
that bad a movie. I don't know. I've seen all the Punisher movies, and that one's. You compare it to the other ones, it's like, it's not that bad.
Some people rank Warzone as their top. Some people.
Oh, that guy was great. Ray Stevenson was.
Ray Stevenson, yeah. He was pretty good.
I don't think I made it all the way through the Tom Jane one.
Oh no,
no.
I'm
like, oh.
He was good. They took a little too many.
Nothing against him, but it was like, oh,
right,
boy, yeah.
So, Dolph Lundgren. You know what? I remember. I remember. I haven't seen it in a lot of years. I remember Stan Lee didn't care for it because it was too violent. But it's the Punisher.
Yeah. It's like an '80s canon film.
Right.
It's like it's trashy, but it's pretty close to the character if you're a fan of the character.
Yeah, canon offered all kinds of craziness.
Yeah,
I loved it.
I bet you it's on Tubi.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these things are generally when people talk about comics and being kind of immature, sometimes they mention these things. But you actually have a comic book that is designed for an immature readers only, and it's called My Bullshit.
Yes.
Which I would love to get straight.
Now we can curse. No.
Yay! Yay! Bad words. I love that.
Yes.
So what's the story behind that? Because I know it's out there, limited numbers, but it's out there.
Yeah. It was kind of like I had a bunch of comics that I didn't really have a home, like a lot of shorts and stuff, and I also had a bunch of goofy ideas for just one-off comics. And I was like, why don't I just do like a 90s independent one-man anthology throwback just for fun and just see if anybody likes it. And I collected like 32 pages of comics and found a printer and just printed up 100 of them. And actually it was 200. And I just started bringing them to shows to see what happened. And people really liked it. And I threw it online. And like for some strange thing happened, I had a whole bunch of copies left. It was anybody that picked it up liked it. But then, and I've been trying to work on material. The first issue was about half old stuff and half new stuff. And just goofy comic strips and ideas that I've done, mostly one-page gags. And the second issue, I'm about halfway done writing and drawing it. But then for some reason, 2 weeks ago, a bunch of issues started selling like crazy. I don't know what happened. Somebody must have seen it or reviewed it.
Right, word of mouth, right?
Word of mouth must have hit the right spot, and now I'm sold out.
That's fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a nice problem to have.
Right,
Now I have to put together some money to reprint it and then print the second one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. And so when you started doing this, when you started just kind of piecing together, when you started getting into this industry, I assume that it wasn't the smooth road that it somehow now appears to be on the outside. Right.
It's never a smooth road.
No.
You never know. Nobody takes the same path in.
But I'm sure there are lots of young people of different ages or new readers getting into comic books, and they're seeing books like Action Activists in their classroom. And it's not only inspiring them to know more about activism, know more about philosophy and presidents, but also it might inspire them to get into the comic book field themselves. Do you have any advice for any aspiring artists or writers out there that want to break in?
My only advice is start by doing something that makes you really happy, and that is where making the comic itself, whether you're writing, drawing, or both, where doing it is its own reward.
Right.
Because that's going to create a genuineness that people will respond to and will eventually lead to success. If you try to calculate it, if you try to say, this is what the people, anytime I tried to do that, anytime I tried to saw some kind of comic and said nobody wants this, I'm going to do something the complete opposite of that. Or even the opposite of that, where it's we did, like I mentioned before, we did this Stupid Powers role-playing game. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons we did that is because I was almost positive that it would be a huge hit and it would just make us money, and then we could do what we really wanted to. That was a mistake.
So it wasn't really a labor of love. It was
not. Well, for me, it was for the other guys. It was not for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved working with them. I loved drawing the stuff.
Oh, sure.
But then I realized, like, as we were halfway through, it's like, wait a minute, I don't play role-playing games. In fact, I don't really like role-playing games. Why am I doing this? But, making the material, drawing the stuff, and working with them was a blast. And I was just like, why did, that's a lesson that I had to learn, take away from that, is that you have to do something that makes you happy and keep doing it. And then put it out and share it with as many people as you can. And eventually that can lead to things like this Action Activist comic, because that came from us just loving doing nonfiction work and having fun working with Fred and just having that connection.
And people respond to that. People respond to your passion.
People respond to it. I mean, people responded to the very first Action Philosophers comic because we were not really taking it seriously. We did it, we kept it factual. We really told the real story. It was about Friedrich Nietzsche. We really told his real story, but we made as many jokes as we could because that's just who we are. And that was just our natural instinct. And that's, I think, what people responded to.
No, I agree with you. And that is definitely solid advice for anyone at any age looking to get into the industry.
And that's for any creative career, really. I mean, if you're a musician, if you're a filmmaker or a dancer, you do what makes you happy and you do what feels right to you rather than what you think other people want. No,
solid. But in terms of your own inspiration, I know I did a bit of a deep dive into your Twitter account.
You've been stalking me. I can tell.
It's a lot of weird stuff, man. A lot of weird. But one of the things that you pinpointed was New Mutants number 20. I think it was written by Chris Claremont.
Chris Claremont and Bill Sienkiewicz, more so.
So you identified it as really a comic book that kind of changed your perception.
It was a real light bulb moment reading that comic.
What about it stands out?
I think it was the first comic where I must have been 12 or 13 years old when it came out, and I read it new right off the stands. I'd just gotten into comics, specifically X-Men, and my brother was actually buying that one. And I remember bringing it home and just looking at the cover, I'm like, what is this? Open it up, and it was a light bulb moment. Not only did it engage me, not only was it not like nothing I'd ever seen before, but it was something that made me realize this came from one person, or two people actually. This was, and that's all it took. These are drawings on paper. For me, it was like comics were just this product that existed and just showed up like a toy or a carton of milk. And then that, I think, was the moment when I realized that comics were an art form. And I was so inspired by that comic in particular, and it just kind of opened up my whole world and opened up my perceptions to what art could be and what expression could be, what stories could be. I actually was able to tell Bill this.
Oh, very cool.
At a convention in Toronto. We just happened to be sitting next to each other, and I was so nervous. I'm like, oh my God, Bill Sienkiewicz is sitting at the table right next to me. But he's one of the sweetest people you've ever met. And he was so nice, and we just, commiserated like people. And then it's Sunday, and I hadn't told him this, and then Sunday comes around and I'm like, Bill, I have a big confession to tell you. And I just poured this all out. I'm like, this is it. I'm going to scare him off. He's never going to talk to me again. And he was so sweet. No. And he's like, that is such a nice thing to say.
Right.
He gave me his phone number and like, come visit me in the studio. I'm like, I still haven't taken him up on it, but it's
definitely.
Yeah, that was one of those few moments where you meet one of your heroes and they're even better than you imagined.
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah. And the issue itself was really like a surreal one. I think there was the Badlands, Wastelands.
It's they fight the demon bear in this other demon bear's other dimension, and there's like this little map that shows up in the corner that shows like how much of his shadow is taking up, and it's pretty brutal too, because the soul sword is introduced and it's like she stabs people with it. It's crazy, and it's the way it's drawn. It's both realistic and abstract at the same time. You can see there's so much emotion, and you could feel like he was almost acting with ink. It was like I agree. Things were just like pouring out on the page. And it's like, this is crazy. It was like one of the most punk rock things I'd ever seen.
That's a great way to describe it, actually, because it was definitely, as you said, surreal. It was definitely a departure from what you were seeing in a lot of books at the time. And if you're definitely going to pick up one, and it's going to be one of your first,
even that series before that had some terrific artwork from Bob McLeod had drawn it, and then Sal Buscemi had drawn it, and then all of a sudden Bill Sienkiewicz comes on, and it's like, whoa! It was like a bomb dropped, and I know a lot of people hated it, but I loved it. And then that issue, when it came out, that was the third issue he drew. It was just was a revelation.
And boy, I'm trying to remember if I don't remember too much about the New Mutants movie, but I'm pretty sure it's in there. The bears, I think the
bear is the antagonist.
Yeah, that's right. Boy, it's been a while since I watched that. Another movie that wasn't really as bad as people say, but
no, not at all. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, it had some problems, but I didn't think it was a bad movie.
Yeah.
And the Magic and Wolfsbane looked like they came straight out of the comics. Those comics specifically, and I was just like, that was a thrill.
Well, kind of like the issue itself, kind of like New Mutants 20, the movie was real, not what you're expecting from a superhero film either. Definitely so you do kind of applaud their bold choice to kind of go away from that superhero formula and do their own thing.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
It was more like have you ever seen the Dream Warriors, the Freddy Krueger?
Sure.
The third one, which is their best one. It was a lot. It reminded me of that, which was a good movie to emulate.
Man, with the needles for fingers when he did
that was the closest we got to a superhero movie in the 80s.
Right.
Was that movie? Yeah.
There's we got away with seeing a lot of stuff in the 80s that today would. I always tell people I remember the poster for RoboCop, thinking I was going in to see a big superhero film, and then watching Alex Murphy get shot to Swiss cheese.
That was specific. As soon as you said there's a lot we saw in the 80s, and that was specifically what I saw.
yeah. Man, RoboCop. Yeah. Half man, half cop. 100% nightmare fuel for a young man.
I paid so many late fees on that movie renting it. I didn't. My parents wouldn't buy me a ticket to that one. But
for anyone who's watching this on the YouTube channel, the background picture here is a Ryan Dunlavey creation, and it's an amalgamation of just about every 80s kind of late 70s, 80s kind of icons. Everyone from Ronald Reagan to Cobra Commander to She-Ra, Max Headroom. So clearly you're a fan of the time. You're a fan of the era. Yeah. Are there any? Because I know a lot of. Nostalgia is bankable these days, and you're an artist that is in high demand and with great talent. Are there any of?
Nobody's. I wish.
Are there any of these? No, don't be. Listen, I think you're absolutely amazing. Your artwork is so it's so unique. It's so kinetic. Like you, I know we're working with two-dimensional medium, but you could sense the movement. You could. It's very lively. It's very lively.
It's the animation influence.
Really. It's evident.
Yeah. Well, that was what I actually wanted to do. Was going to animation, and comics just sort of happened instead.
Right. If you could get a stab at it, if you get a shot at it, working on any of those series that have gone the way of the dodo, but nostalgia keeps them alive. Is there any particular ones that stand out that you like?
Of those, I would love to do any kind of animated thing, but I would, anything funny, anything with action and drama, or But Looney Tunes is really near and dear to my heart, and the newest ones are actually finally, after 60 years or 70 years, are starting to match the quality of the stuff of the golden stuff that they did. But yeah, it's an easy answer, but really anything. I've gotten to the point where I've worked on Marvel stuff. I've worked on G.I. Joe. Both in an official capacity, and then all these other things. And, I might have designed a t-shirt here or there, and I've gotten to the point. Oh, my son is walking into the room. What do you need? What do you need? Okay, there he goes. Cameo appearance. I'm in his room. It's you live in New York. Oh, there he goes.
Oh, look at that.
live in New York, and
I
it's tight quarters. So
I understand.
Yeah, we mostly live in one giant room. It's kind of a loft apartment, so
nice,
private
nice.
space. But no, as I was saying, I would love to work on anything that comes my way. I really
right
find a way to love it. Bucket list wise, I think maybe Batman. That's about the only thing I could think of
nice.
I think would be
it's a solid choice.
Fun to do. Yeah, but yeah. Hopefully someday it's going to be public domain.
Well, right. I think Superman has another 3 years.
Yeah.
And
no, the corporations will fight it, and they'll.
No doubt.
You can't do it.
No,
I mean, if Tarzan is still not public domain,
right?
They'll find a way to.
Then there's no chance of Mickey Mouse or.
Oh, no way! Yeah.
No. I'm with you. I can't even pretend. I can't even pretend. People ask me all the time. I'm like, I can't even pretend to understand a copyright law. And if you do, you're going to have a good life, because there's a lot of, I'm not a litigious-minded man.
I know more than most people, especially from doing pieces like this one that you put as a background.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's not easy to navigate or understand.
Right. And I'm sure.
Best is to just leave it alone. Don't try to make your own thing. If you really have the urge to, create stuff. I
like that idea. Are there any, you know what, before I get into that, how would you feel about playing? I like to kind of wind down with a quick game.
Okay.
Are you game for a game?
I suppose.
Okay.
It'll be fine.
I'll take that non-committal as yes. Yes, legally.
I just busted your chops.
I know. All right. So I'm going to ask you, who's better at it? And I'm going to give you a few categories.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you two options. One is fictional and one is nonfiction. And I want to know who scores higher on the Dunlavey chart. Who is...
Please nobody debate me about my answers on Twitter. I will just mute you. And
gotcha.
I don't have time. Okay. Anyways, go ahead.
Leadership. Optimus Prime or Abraham Lincoln?
Well, they both got killed by their arch enemies while in office. So it's a tough call.
That's true. Lincoln didn't have the Matrix, though. So
Lincoln did not have the Matrix. And he also did not come back from the dead.
Good point.
And continue to be ruined by Michael Bay in some of the movies.
But Prime wasn't a vampire hunter, so he's got
I know it's tough. I'm calling it a draw.
Calling it a draw. Good go. All right. Fatherhood. MODOK or Thomas Jefferson?
Oh, MODOK. Come on.
I figured
Who loves those kids?
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson, I don't know. He's a little problematic.
Yeah, his kids are a little bit problematic. Absolutely. Yeah. Philosophy. Who's better on your scale? Splinter from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Confucius?
Oh, Confucius. I like Splinter, but
you can't beat Confucius.
I think you can tell Splinter's probably got like a bottle of schnapps hidden in the toilet tank that he hits when the boys are out busting ninjas.
Like, thank God, they're gone.
Yeah, yeah. Confucius keeps it real.
Gotcha. And how about fighting? Let's put fighting. Wolverine.
Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Ooh. Who would win in a fight between now? How did they fare well? It's gonna be Wolverine.
Nice. Okay.
But on one, I don't know. Teddy might be able to take him.
You going with the bull moose?
Yeah.
The bull moose takes down
head to head. I think Teddy might have the edge. He definitely has the height. So.
And how about this? Is more recent. There's been a slight change in terms of just being pure evil. Cobra Commander.
Okay.
Or Dilbert creator Scott Adams.
Scott Adams.
Yeah.
Because Cobra Commander is incredibly ineffectual.
Right.
He's mostly a clown. But Scott Adams, really, he knows how to destroy a career.
Yeah.
Mostly his own.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Cobra Commander was pretty inclusive. He took everybody from Cobra Law.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Dreadnoks were pretty,
Yeah.
It was,
All were welcome in the territory.
Pretty white group, but if you let the Dreadnoks in, they'd probably.
They'll take. I mean,
yeah, the guy who's the guy with the big snake body. Oh no, he was the leader. The
Galobulus. Oh, look at yeah.
Nemesis Enforcer, who the guy with the big spikes out of his his shoulders. I think
You know your G.I. Joe movie.
I know scary amounts about G.I. Joe. I collected the figures long before it was cool to collect anything.
I got two of them right here. I got Snake
very
Eyes
nice.
and Scarlet.
Oh, that's from Toy Fair.
I was about to say, I think it's from Toy Fair. Yeah, actually.
Yeah. When they finally,
I did it. I was one of those people.
Nice work.
I think I have a Jason Todd too. That was a Toy Fair. Right
that was fun when they started Toy Fair, because I was not. It was like 96, 97. That's when I was working there, and I was not really into comics at least mainstream comics of that time, of the mid 90s. But then anytime they covered toys, I'm like, that's cool, and because I was buying them like crazy.
Yeah.
And they would regularly.
No,
the editors would regularly see me at the toy stores around there. They were doing work. I was buying stuff for myself.
Right. I think you fell out of comics, or at least mainstream comics, at just about the time that a good chunk of the nation did as well.
We all do. We all drift in and out.
My time was my drift out was a little later in the 90s, right? But I think I got back in maybe with the Infinite Crisis. I think I got. Oh no.
Okay.
Zero Hour got me back.
I got back in. I started getting back into it when Grant Morrison started writing the X-Men.
Okay.
And he came back.
Good time.
Joe Quesada was and Jimmy Palmiotti had started Marvel Knights, and I was like, oh, I can dig these comics. Those are kind of cool. So yeah.
So for anyone who is looking to meet you to discuss anything from G.I. Joe to action activists and philosophers, are you? I know you're headquartered in the Big Apple, but are you making any con appearances or book signings or talking to educators? Are there any appearances coming up? The
only appearance I have coming up is I'm going to be at C2E2 in Chicago at the end of this month.
Cool.
I'm pretty excited to go back there. I'm going for the convention, but I'm also going because I'm researching the next graphic novel that I'm in the middle of drawing right now, which is about Chris Farley.
Wow.
Yeah, for Z2 Comics.
Okay.
Working with this writer, Frank Mirafino, and Chris's brother, Kevin Farley.
Nice.
They are co-writing the book, and I'm drawing it. And I'm going to hit all his old haunts and whatnot while I'm in Chicago.
Oh, so, that's amazing.
This is his home base for a while.
Fat man, a little coat. I can't.
Fat man, a little coat.
That's amazing. Oh, you know what? I'm so glad. A lot of people when they come on, they're like, "Oh, I can't discuss," but I'm so happy to hear
it's been announced. But okay. I just.
I'm gonna pretend like it was an exclusive.
Okay.
I'm gonna roll with that.
It was actually announced a couple of months ago, but it's taken us some time to get started on it.
Wow! So it's a fun.
It's called Growing Up Farley. It's a graphic novel from Z2 Comics, and it's about Chris and his brother Kevin's life growing up. And there's some crazy stories that I've heard so far. And I can't remember exactly what it goes up to, but it does go up to the part where they both enter, because Kevin is an actor and a stand-up comedian as well, where they both enter the entertainment world. Yeah.
Anything about any release date planned?
The release date has been pushed back, but it will be sometime this year.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Very cool. That's awesome. Well, listen, I really want to thank you for taking the time to speak with me. You are an amazing talent, a kind man,
Thanks,
and a lot of fun to talk to. And hopefully,
thanks for letting me ramble on and on.
Listen, rambling.
As soon as I leave the room, my family is going to be like, "What the heck is that BS that you were slinging for like the last hour or so?"
That's right.
They'll be like, "Oh, look at it, big man! All the comics you've drawn. Look how great, Mr. Big Shot."
That's right. Yeah. You guys live with a celebrity.
New York City family. They're like, "Yeah, you're not so big." My wife's from a large Italian family, and they're very dismissive. Well, they're not dismissive, but they don't care. They're like, oh yeah, you made comics. Yeah, that's great.
Well, I think it's great, and
Thanks.
so do all of the children in New York City who are Fred action activists and who have.
Yeah, Fred and I did a big talk with like 30 classes today because of those books, and it was
right.
it was a thrill.
I
wish I could have seen. It was over Zoom. I wish I could have seen and heard all the kids in person, but just seeing them this big, going, "Oh my God, comics!"
That's pretty cool.
Really fun. Everybody loves comics.
Everybody loves comics, and if they don't, they should.
Yeah.
And if they don't,
if they should. They need to get the heck out of here.
Yeah, there's something wrong with them.
Something very, very wrong.
Ryan, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks,
I look forward and hopefully we'll talk again when the Chris Farley book comes out, which will be a lot of fun.
Yeah. That'd be great.
That would be great. Have fun in Chicago. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm gonna have tons of stories to talk to you about that once that book's done.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. Have fun in Chicago. I hope it's a blast. I'm sure everyone who gets a chance to meet you is going to be enthralled. So thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Guys, I'm Tom Torme. This was the Cosmic Comic Nation. And until next time, be well and stay safe.